Hey everyone, welcome back to Soul Podcasting. This is the show where we talk all things podcasting for small businesses and creatives. I'm your host, Demetria, and today we're diving into a topic that's super important if you're serious about podcasting for your business in 2024 and beyond. And this is all about how to measure your podcast's ROI, which is your return on investment. And no, we're not just talking about downloads. We're talking about the real deal, which is how to see results beyond just your numbers. But first, if you're new to the show, welcome. And if you're not so new, welcome back. Whether you need a website design or some podcasting support or a content marketing plan or an SEO boost, I'm here for you. You can find all of my services listed over at my website. And you can also find information on digital marketing and entrepreneurship on my blog over at demetriazinga.com. So if you've been wondering, is my podcast actually working for my business? If you've asked yourself that question, or if you've just been stuck looking at download counts, then this episode is for you. We're going to chat about tracking that engagement, generating your leads, and even driving your sales. This is all the juicy stuff that tells you if your podcast is really pulling its weight. I'll walk you through some of the key metrics that we should be keeping an eye on. And by the end of the episode, you should have a clear plan for measuring your podcast success in this year and beyond that goes way past just your downloads. So let's be real, we all get a little bit obsessed with those download numbers. I know I do. I check my download numbers quite often. It's the first thing we check after releasing an episode, right? But here's the deal. Downloads don't tell you the full story. Sure, they give you just an idea of how many people hit the play button, but they don't show you if listeners are actually engaging with your content or if your podcast is making an impact on your business. And downloads also won't tell you if people are staying until the end of your episode, or if they've taken action on your offers, or if they're even telling their friends about your show. So you just have to dig a little bit deeper to find out all of this extra information that downloads and hitting the play button cannot tell you. So first on my list is listener engagement. And so we're going to get into metrics that actually matter at this point. And my first one is listener engagement. And this is where you can see how involved your audience is. Are they sticking around for the entire episode, or are they interacting with your content in any way? So to measure this, you might want to check your episode completion rate to see how many people are listening before they drop off. And you can find those types of metrics in platforms like Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Another way that I like to track my listener engagement is through the play button that is installed on my website, on my blog, because I do have quite a few people who like to engage through listening on my website versus listening on Apple Podcasts or some other podcast platform. So I'm able to go into my analytics in Google Analytics and see how long listeners are on my podcast page and what they're clicking on to listen to those different episodes, which specific episodes they're listening to, and how long they stay on those pages. So I'm able to dig just a little bit deeper by not only looking at my stats for Apple Podcasts or Spotify, but also going on my website. And this is helpful if you do have a widget installed on your website. You may be able to further investigate how things are going with your listener engagement. There are also quite a few other ways to see how well your listeners are engaged. And we're going to get into that next when we talk about social media and community engagement. But one thing I just want to mention before we jump into the social media topic is that if you notice that your listeners are tuning out halfway through your shows, it might be time to rethink your format. How are you presenting your content? Maybe it's time to tighten up the intro, or maybe just get to the core of the topic a little bit faster. Sometimes a lot of chit chat and a very, very long intro isn't helpful. For me, and my podcast, they all are, because they're all so different with different audiences. Depending on which audience I'm talking to, my intro might be a lot longer. So I know that on this show, I try to tighten things up a little bit, but on my homeschool podcast, I'm a little bit lengthier in my intro. I used to be even longer with getting into the nuts and bolts of what I wanted to talk about, but I've learned over the years to sort of shorten things just a little bit, get into the actual content so that my listeners understand that I care about their time and I want them to enjoy the content as quickly as possible without feeling the rush into the content. So now let's talk about social media and community engagement. Let's talk about how your podcast is driving that conversation piece online. Are your listeners tagging you on social media? Are they leaving you comments? Are they sharing episodes? Are they mentioning your show in their posts? That's something to really keep track of. Any mentions that you have, any comments, any shares is a great indicator that your podcast is resonating with people and starting to build a community. So if you're getting comments, you should respond to those comments and see what the general vibe is on your socials regarding your content. You can encourage engagement by creating hashtag challenges or asking your listeners specific questions that they can answer on social media. And that can also be a driver back to your podcast and vice versa back to your socials as well. So it's just a great way to combine maybe your Instagram or your TikTok or whatever you use as your preferred platform with your podcast and build some engagement there. Once again, it's not always about how many people are downloading your shows, but you can also measure success by the amount of engagement that you're receiving online with the people that are listening, right? So maybe you don't gain 1,000 more subscribers and you don't gain 1,000 more listens this month, but maybe you're getting some engagement with the few listeners that you do have. And that can be a measure of success for your podcast as well. Next, let's talk about some pretty good stuff. Lead generation. If your podcast is part of your marketing funnel and you will want to have one, you want to know if it's bringing in new leads. So we'll talk about marketing funnels either on this podcast or another if I should start one just specifically on marketing. But marketing funnels is a really important part of your lead generation strategy. You need to understand how to bring your potential customers or listeners into your funnel, inviting them in and making sure that your podcast is placed at maybe the very top of that funnel so that you're able to understand how your customers relate to your business. If your podcast is part of your marketing funnel, you want to know if it's bringing in new leads. So your funnel is something that you want to make sure you put that in place before you start your podcast so you know how your podcast fits into the overall scope of your business. And then you want to ask yourself, are people signing up for your newsletter? Are they downloading that freebie after listening to your show? How are they getting into your funnel? Make sure you're tracking where your leads are coming from by using tools like trackable links or promo codes. You can find trackable links in tools like HubSpot. I've used that a few times, or even right within your email list provider service, which is what I've been using. You'll be able to see how many people download your links and segment your list to see who's signing up for what. And it's really a great way to bring new subscribers into your funnel who have been listening to your podcast and just need a way to figure out how to partner with you in your business and be a part of your community. So this is a great way to generate leads, to grow your business, to grow your prospects, while also giving your listeners a feeling of community and engagement with you and what you do. So here's a tip for you. You'll want to mention a free resource at the end of your episode, maybe not every single show, but sometimes offer a free resource or a unique landing page that's just for your podcast listeners, nobody else. That way you can see exactly how many people are taking action from your show specifically. So create a landing page that's just for your podcast listeners. Anytime someone lands on that page and signs up for your freebie, you know they came directly from your podcast. And that way you can keep track of how you're generating leads through your show. Finally, the ultimate goal for a lot of us is sales, right? Your podcast can absolutely drive your sales, whether it's for a product, a service, or a digital course. So to track this, you'll need a way to tie your sales back to your podcast. You want to use promo codes again, or special offers just for your listeners and see how many conversions you get. Plus, you'll want to ask your customers how they found you. It might surprise you how many say that they first heard about you through your podcast. So don't be afraid to ask whenever you do make a sale, how did you find our company? And just let that be kind of your driving force for continuing to make the changes and the tweaks that you need in your business and in your sales funnel. And finally, we're going to put all of this together and we're going to talk about creating a simple ROI dashboard, which is your return on investment. We'll talk about adjusting your strategy. And then lastly, we're just going to wrap up with some key takeaways. So let's talk about your simple ROI dashboard. And to keep things really easy, I recommend creating a simple dashboard to track these metrics regularly. You can use a spreadsheet, or even if you're a bit tech savvy, something like Google Analytics and email marketing tools, that's going to work really well for you also. Just have a way to track your listener engagement, your leads, and your sales side by side so you can clearly see what's working for you. And just so you know that I practice what I preach, in the show notes of this episode, you can download my free ROI dashboard template, and I'll have that available for you in a link that you can download, and it's just for you guys, right? So that way I can track how many of you are downloading the resource and are using it in your business. So you'll see the link in the show notes for that. And here's a tip for you regarding that dashboard. Give yourself a baseline. Ask yourself, where am I starting from? And then set your small goals. Maybe you want to, for example, increase your listener engagement by 10%. Or rather than percentages, maybe you want to use actual numbers, which is what I prefer. I like to see my sales conversions increase each month. So you'll say maybe 5 more sales conversions per month from my podcast. Just take baby steps and then see how much you progress from month to month. So again, you can find a link to that resource in the show notes. And remember, podcasting is a long game. Long term, think long term. It takes time to build an engaged audience and to see direct results, to be honest, because this is not something you can rush. You're not going to be able to start your show and within 1 week you have 50,000 subscribers and you're famous. That's not how it works, right? You want to make sure that you are putting all the pieces in place, that if you're using podcasting for business purposes, as opposed to as a hobby or maybe even ministry or something else, that you're using your podcast effectively to bring people into your marketing funnel and you're able to bring them through the funnel to the end of that funnel where finally they are comfortable enough with you and your business, have been introduced to your services and products over 7 times because they've been downloading your content and are warmed up. They are your warm market and they are ready to purchase from you. So that's what we're looking to do with a podcast regarding business strategy. So remember, if something isn't working, you want to tweak your content and you'll want to test different types of episodes. Again, you want to try different formats. Maybe you're using interviews. Maybe you're doing sort of a coaching style one-on-one monologue, the way I'm doing right now. Or you might want to try different calls to action. Some calls to action work better at the very beginning of a podcast episode. Some work better at the end. I did my call to action in the middle when I asked you guys to download a worksheet for your business. And then at the very beginning, my call to action was for you to visit my website, take a look at my blog at dimitriazinga.com. And at the end of this show, there will also be another CTA. So see what clicks with your audience in adjusting your strategy to see if you're able to create that engagement. Okay. And so there you have it. Today, we covered how to move beyond just looking at your numbers, the downloaded numbers, right? And that's what we sometimes get hyper focused on. But there's so much more to podcasting and to seeing results and to achieving success with your show than to looking at how many people are downloading your show. And we're moving from that to focusing on the metrics that truly matter, which is engagement, lead generation, and sales. So by paying attention to these 3 things, you can really measure the impact of your podcast on your business and make sure that all that hard work is actually paying off for you. So if you want to dive deeper into tracking your podcast ROI, ROI or you need help developing a strategy for your show, I would love for you to reach out to me through the link in the show notes. I'd love to help you craft a podcast that truly works for your business. You can reach me at demetriazinga.com. And thanks for tuning into Soul Podcasting. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a fellow podcaster or a business owner. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes. And until next time, keep creating and keep podcasting.